You prayed, you surrendered, you let go, and then the anxiety got worse. That is not what anyone told you would happen. Every sermon said trust brings peace. Every verse seemed to promise it. So why does letting go feel like falling? What nobody tells you is this: trusting God can feel more frightening than staying in control, and that fear might actually mean your faith is working. This video is about why that happens, the real psychological and spiritual reason surrender feels like danger, not safety. You are not broken, you are not failing at faith, you are experiencing something that almost nobody in church will name out loud. Anxiety disorders affect roughly 284 million people worldwide. Among Christians, the rates are not lower. In some studies, they are higher. Researchers have found that for some believers, religious coping, surrendering outcomes to God, can temporarily spike anxiety rather than reduce it. This is not a spiritual failure, it is a predictable psychological response, and understanding it changes everything. Think about the last time you truly tried to surrender something: a relationship, a diagnosis, a financial fear. What happened in your body the moment you released it? For most people, the honest answer is, it got louder, the chest got tighter, the mind ran faster. You are not alone in that experience. That is not weakness. That is how a nervous system responds when it loses the one thing it thought kept you safe. Control. That is the word underneath all of this. Control is not just a habit. For many of us, it is a survival strategy we built before we were old enough to choose it. If your home growing up was unpredictable, emotionally, financially, physically, your brain learned that staying alert kept you safe. Vigilance became virtue. Worry felt productive. Planning for every outcome felt responsible. And it worked for a time. But here is the real problem. When you come to faith and someone tells you to stop controlling, your nervous system hears something very different from what they mean. They hear, stop surviving, stop protecting yourself, be vulnerable in a world that has hurt you before. No wonder it triggers panic, no wonder the anxiety spikes. That is not spiritual immaturity, that is a protective system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Psychologists call this the control paradox. The tighter you grip, the more anxious you become about losing your grip. And when faith asks you to open your hands, it is not just a spiritual act, it is a neurological one. Your amygdala does not know the difference between surrender and threat. So you pray, and the alarm bell rings, and you assume the alarm means God is not answering, but that is not what is happening. What is happening is that for the first time, you are genuinely releasing something, and release feels like loss before it feels like freedom. But the real danger here is what many Christians do next. They feel the anxiety spike and conclude that trusting God does not work for them. So they take the control back. The anxiety quiets slightly, and the brain logs a lesson. Control worked, surrender failed. If this story sounds familiar, stay with this, because this is exactly where most people get stuck, and exactly where the real truth lives. Here is what nobody says plainly enough. The anxiety you feel when you surrender is not evidence that surrender is wrong. It is evidence that you have been holding on for a very long time. The anxiety is the sound of release. Think of it this way. If you have been clenching a fist for years and someone slowly opens your fingers, that is not painless. The muscles protest, the tendons ache, the sensation of opening can feel worse than the tension of holding. That is what spiritual surrender feels like in a body that learned to equate control with safety. The pain is real. It is not a sign you are doing it wrong. There is also a theological dimension here that the church rarely names. Trusting God asks you to rely on someone you cannot see, cannot predict, and cannot manage. If the authority figures in your life were unreliable, the idea of a God who controls outcomes can feel less like comfort and more like threat. Your image of God is shaped partly by the humans who raised you. That is not theology, that is neuroscience, and it matters deeply here. If you experienced a parent who was loving but inconsistent, your brain learned that love comes and goes, that the good times do not last. And so when God feels close, something in you braces, because close has always meant eventually gone. That hypervigilance is the anxiety you carry into prayer. Attachment theorists call this anxious attachment. It affects roughly 20% of adults and shows up powerfully in how people relate to God. Research by psychologist Lee Kirkpatrick showed that people's attachment to God often mirrors their early attachment to caregivers. The patterns transfer. This is not fatalism. It is understanding the terrain. You cannot walk yourself out of a wound you cannot see. Naming it is the first act of healing. And here is where faith becomes not an obstacle to healing, but the very ground it stands on. Because what God offers is not just peace as a feeling. If you have found something worth staying for in this video, a like helps more people find it. It takes 1 second and it matters. God offers a different kind of relationship entirely, one that does not require you to earn safety through vigilance or control. Philippians 4 is often quoted as the anxiety verse. Do not be anxious about anything. But most people stop reading before the mechanism is explained. Paul does not say, stop feeling anxious because God is in control. He says, bring everything to God in prayer with thanksgiving, and then a peace beyond understanding will guard you. The peace guards. It does not arrive first. You bring the fear. The peace follows. That order matters. The anxious spike you feel when you try to surrender is not the absence of God. It is the moment before the guard arrives. And Paul writes this from prison. Not from a comfortable place where trust was easy, from a cell. That context changes the weight of every word. Jesus in Gethsemane did not fake peace. He sweated. He asked for another way. Real surrender looks like that, honest, anguished, and still trusting. Gethsemane is the model, not calm confidence, not serene release, trembling, open hands. The Psalms are full of this. Psalm 22 opens with, my God, why have you forsaken me? That is not a failure of faith. That is what faith actually sounds like in the dark. God is not alarmed by your anxiety. He does not pull back when the fear spikes. He is not disappointed that surrender is hard for you. He knows what you were built from. He knows which rooms taught you to lock the door, and He is not in a hurry. This is what the church often misses. Grace is not just forgiveness for sin. It is also patience with the places in you that are still learning what safety means. The goal is not to eliminate the anxiety before you trust. The goal is to trust in the presence of the anxiety. That is a completely different ask. So here is the one practical thing, not a list, one thing, and it requires a small but significant shift in how you pray when the anxiety rises. Most anxious prayers sound like negotiations. God, please fix this. Please make it okay. Please take this away. That is still control, just redirected upward. The shift is this. Instead of praying for the anxiety to leave, pray while the anxiety is present. Do not wait for calm before you open your hands. Open them now in the storm. Specifically, when the anxiety spikes after surrender, try saying this out loud or in writing. I feel afraid right now. I am releasing this anyway. I do not need to feel safe to be safe. That last sentence is important. I do not need to feel safe to be safe. Anxiety lies. It tells you the feeling is the reality. But the feeling of danger is not the same as actual danger, and the feeling of abandonment is not the same as being abandoned. Naming this out loud interrupts the loop. Over time, and this is slow work, honest work, the nervous system begins to build a new file, one that says, I released control, nothing catastrophic happened, God was present. Each time that happens, trust becomes slightly more possible, not in one dramatic moment of breakthrough, in small, repeated acts of trembling faith. The counterintuitive truth is this. If surrendering to God triggers anxiety in you, that is not a sign your faith is thin. It may be the first honest act of faith you have ever made. Because real trust is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to remain open, even when everything in you wants to close. That gap between the wanting to close and staying open, that is faith. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are in the valley that every honest believer passes through eventually. Most of them just did not talk about it. The anxiety that rises when you try to trust God is not your enemy. It is a messenger. It is telling you exactly where the work is. And work done in that place, slowly and honestly, changes you. Not into someone who never feels fear, into someone who can feel fear and still stay open. That is the quiet miracle. There is more to say about anxiety and faith, about what happens when peace does not come quickly, and what the Bible says about that long waiting. That video is already on the way. If you are in the middle of this right now, in the place where trust feels like danger, just stay. You do not have to feel brave. You just have to stay. And you are not staying alone. That has always been the point of all of this. More of this every week. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.